A long time ago, in a small village nestled between lush green mountains and surrounded by dense forests, there lived a man named Amadeo. At 63 years old, he was known for his simple appearance and unwavering kindness. He always wore the same patched clothes, wore worn-out boots, and carried an old leather backpack that seemed as old as he was. At his side was always Lua, his faithful dog, whose bright eyes reflected the same kindness that emanated from Amadeo's heart. Amadeo's life had not been easy. He had lost his wife, Clara, years ago, to a cruel disease that took her from his arms before they could grow old together. Since then, he lived in isolation in that village, dedicating himself to working the land and taking long walks along the forest trails. But what few knew was that Amadeo kept a secret. Throughout his adult life, he had been searching for something that he believed was the key to finding peace and meaning in the midst of his solitude. It wasn't gold or material wealth, but rather an object that he associated with Clara's memory, a crystal star she had given him on their last birthday together. The star had mysteriously disappeared after her death, and ever since then Amadeo vowed to find it again, even though he didn't know where or how. Every day he walked through the forest and fields near the village, always accompanied by Lua. His search seemed eternal, but he never gave up. For Amadeo, that star represented more than a memory. It was a symbol of love, hope, and connection with the past. Often the people of the village would see him return, tired, dirty, with dirt and dry leaves, but always with a slight smile on his lips, as if believing in the possibility of finding that relic was enough to keep him alive. One day, while exploring a part of the forest he hadn't visited in years, Amadeo felt something different in the air. It was as if nature itself was trying to tell him something. Lua, normally calm, began to bark insistently, running from one side to the other among the trees. Intrigued, Amadeo followed her to a hidden clearing where there was an old, abandoned cabin. The wooden walls were covered in moss, and the partially collapsed roof let in rays of light that illuminated the floor covered in dry leaves. Curious, Amadeo entered the cabin, holding his cane tightly. Upon entering, he noticed that the place was full of old objects, broken furniture, dusty books, and paintings leaning against the walls. In the center of the room, on a wooden table, there was a glass box covered by a faded red cloth. With trembling hands, Amadeo removed the cloth and found inside the box a crystal star exactly like the one he had been looking for. His heart raced. Tears began to run down his face as he held it delicately, as if he were afraid of breaking it. But something strange happened when he touched the star. A warm feeling ran through his body, and for a brief moment he could have sworn he heard Clara's voice whispering his name. Shaken, he hugged Lua, who also seemed to feel the energy of the moment. He decided then that this would be the last day of his search. He knew that he had finally found what he had longed for, but he also understood that the true treasure was not in the star itself, but in the memories and love it represented. In the following days, Amadeo began to notice subtle changes in his routine. He felt lighter, as if an invisible weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He began to interact more with the villagers, offering to help whenever possible. One time, while passing through the central square, he came across a young mother who was struggling to care for her children while working at a craft stall. Without hesitation, Amadeo offered to help her, carrying heavy boxes and organizing merchandise. The woman, surprised by his generosity, thanked him profusely, saying that he was an angel sent in her hour of need. This gesture marked the beginning of a series of acts of kindness that Amadeo began to practice daily. He began distributing food from his small garden to needy families in the village. He built fences to protect the animals of elderly farmers. He even taught children how to plant trees, explaining the importance of caring for nature. Each action, no matter how small, seemed to rekindle a flame within him, as if he had finally found the purpose he had been searching for. One day, while walking through the village, Amadeo met a young artisan who was selling jewelry in a small makeshift stall. The young man, visibly dejected, told Amadeo that he was facing financial difficulties and that he might need to abandon his passion for art to work in something more lucrative. Moved by the story, Amadeo decided to do something extraordinary. He returned home, took the crystal star, and returned to the young man's stall. He handed the star to him, saying, "Sell this piece and use the money to continue following your dreams. I no longer need it." The young man, moved, tried to refuse, but Amadeo insisted, saying that it was the right choice. In the following months, Amadeo continued his routine of kindness, always accompanied by Lua. His health, however, began to decline. He knew that his days were numbered, but this did not scare him. On the contrary, he felt a deep peace, as if he had finally fulfilled his mission on earth. One morning, after one of his usual walks, he sat down under a tree near his house, closed his eyes, and left peacefully, with Lua by his side. Lua, faithful to the end, remained by Amadeo's body for hours, until a group of villagers found him. Everyone was deeply moved by the passing of the man who had silently transformed their lives with his kindness. In honor of Amadeo, they decided to plant a tree in the clearing where he had found the crystal star, creating a memorial to remember his lessons of love and generosity. Years later, Amadeo's story was still being told in the village. The crystal star, now transformed into a unique necklace, became a symbol of hope for all who saw it. The young artisan prospered thanks to Amadeo's gesture, and Lua was welcomed by the community, who treated her as a living legacy of Amadeo's kindness. Although he was no longer physically present, his legacy lived on in the small actions of each person he had touched. Thus, Amadeo's journey teaches us that the true treasure of life is not in material things, but in the connections we create, the memories we cherish, and the good deeds we do. Like Amadeo, we often spend our entire lives searching for something we believe is essential, only to discover that what really matters was within our reach all along.